you're ready.
All right, sounds good. I'm just set things up and all right, I'm ready.
Okay. As American senators, our constituents elected us to make tough choices. Today, we face one of the toughest, because on one side, you have people that are killing innocent civilians. On the other side, you also have people that are killing innocent civilians. Such is the case in the Middle East. And when it comes time to decide, we have to look at the overall geopolitical picture and realize that there is only one option. That is continual support of Saudi Arabia. First, because of Iran's power, and second, because of the impacts of terrorism. But I want to explain exactly how Iran's involvement in Yemen with the Houthi rebels affects all of Middle Eastern geopolitics. But first, I just want to establish at a baseline that Eric Schmidt tells us in the New York Times, September 18, 2017, that Iran is violating multiple international treaties, including by the United Nations, to smuggle illegal weapons to the Houthi rebels. So just to be clear, Iran is illegally supporting the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Why? The Hill tells us on November 16, 2018, that through Yemen, Iran can essentially destabilize the entirety of the Middle East. That's because of two reasons. First, Yemen is strategically located on the Strait of Hormuz, right next to oil shipping. So if Iran controls Yemen through the Houthi rebels, they control oil shipments through the Middle East, which they can use in their power battle against Saudi Arabia. Second, because of Yemen's geography, it can be used as a launching pad for terrorist attacks against America's other ally in the Middle East, Israel. So essentially, the Middle East is currently in a power battle between Saudi Arabia and Iran in the Muslim countries, and Israel on the side as a Jewish country. Saudi Arabia and Israel are our allies. Iran is not. In Yemen, Iran is fighting Saudi Arabia. If we want to continue supporting our allies, we have no choice but to support Saudi Arabia. Understand, both sides of this conflict are bad, but Saudi Arabia is better than Iran. Secondly, we failed today's legislation because the impact it would have on terror. Senator Saxena and Batad, they both come up here and tell you that Saudi Arabia actually works for terrorist groups. They don't help us in the war on terror. That couldn't be further from the truth. First, Sudushan Raghavan in the Washington Post tells us on February 25th of this year that Al-Qaeda has actually launched attacks against both the Houthi rebels and Saudi-backed forces in the area. So I want to make it clear, Saudi Arabia is not backing Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is attacking Saudi Arabia. Now, what is Saudi Arabia doing about this? Brookings tells us on May 24th, 2016, that Saudi Arabian bomb raids have hit key targets against terrorist groups in both Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Furthermore, the BBC tells us on December 3rd, 2015, that Saudi Arabia has been providing their military bases to American fighters to use in the fight against terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So overall, Saudi Arabia is actually helping us in the fight against terror, contrary to whatever Senators Batad and Saxena have been saying before this. At the end of the day, the Middle East is a complex place. At the end of the day, there are no good sides in this debate, but there's a clear better side. That side is the negation, because Saudi Arabia has the military stability it needs to fight terrorism, and because Saudi Arabia aligns with American interests a lot more than Iran does. At the end of the day, the choice is simple. On one side, you have terrorist groups and Iran. On the other side, you have Saudi Arabia. Pick Saudi Arabia, fail this legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 3 minutes and 4 seconds. All those who wish to question the Senator, please raise your placard. Senator Batad, you have the floor. You have the question unopposed.
Thank you. Senator, that was a great speech. I'm not going to lie, that was pretty, very, very remarkable speech. But I want to address one thing. Why exactly? So, okay. So you talked about Iran a lot. And the fact is, if we pull out our weapons, doesn't that make us less involved in the actual conflict itself?
So the point is, in a power battle between Saudi Arabia and Iran, that's kind of about the future of the Middle East, right? And we need Saudi Arabia to be the winning side.
Yeah, okay. But I just want, okay, so Representative Saxena basically said that we literally give funds to terrorist groups in the region because they're the highest bidder. So they can have.
No, America is not selling weapons to terrorists.
No, not America. Saudi Arabia. They're selling our weapons to the highest bidder.
Selling the weapons, they're using the weapons. That's a pretty big misconception.
Well, okay, so Senator Saxena's point didn't Senator Saxena's evidence basically disprove that though?
No, she was saying something about Saudi losing the weapons and then ended up in the hands of terrorist groups, which to be clear is a concern, but it's not a big enough concern to pass a special
Questioning period has elapsed, but seeing as there are no other questioners, Senator Batad, would you like to take the other questioning period?
I'm okay.
All right. So the chair will absorb the remaining questioning time. Senator Kamara, thank you for your speech and questioning period. You may mute yourself. Seeing that we have reached, that was a negation speech and the end of a cycle, are there any motions on the floor? Seeing none, the chair will now ask for an affirmation speaker. The chair will now ask for an affirmation speaker. The chair highly frowns upon one-sided debate, so I'll ask one more time, and then we will move on to asking for negation speakers. Is there an affirmation speaker? All right, seeing none, the chair now calls for a negation speaker. Senator Morales, you have the floor.
Thank you. That's Senator Morales, spelled Morales. I'm not sure if you have my speaker code, but I believe it's on tab room. Just any indication from my PO and judges when you're ready, and I'll be more than happy to begin. All good, PO?
Always.
Here is Saudi Arabia. To the east is Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and the Persian Gulf. To the south is Yemen and Oman, in an area where terrorism is most prevalent. Negate, because it is essential to have a counterterrorism partner to assist America in fighting terrorism, in which Saudi Arabia has served to be our perfect fit, contrary to what Senator Saxena and the rest of the affirmation have said in today's debate. Let's turn to the United States Department of State Publication Bureau of Counterterrorism, where they state that in December of last year, Saudi Arabia pledged the United States $100 million to support the G5 Sahel force to counter terrorism in West and North Africa. Saudi Arabia is a founding member of the Global Counterterrorism Forum. Senator Saxena, understand that Saudi Arabia has expanded our sphere of influence into North America to fight terrorism in lands we would have a much harder time accessing since we don't have any allies in that area. According to United States Treasury, Saudi Arabia, along with the United States, co-chair the Terrorist Financing Targeting Center. In October of last year, Saudi Arabia joined the United States and the other TFTC members, joining and fighting against individuals and entities supporting Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The TFTC would simply fall apart if America stopped sending weapons to Saudi Arabia. Since they both co-chair it, it would only lead to worse relations, and America would have a harder time fighting those supporters of terrorism. But now second, you failed because Senator Batad's right. You're 100% right, Senator. They aren't going to Russia. But understand that China will be taking America's place as Saudi Arabia's weapons provider. And Senator Saxena loves to tell you about how the transition would be difficult, but let me make it apparent to her and the rest of the affirmation that China has already been making efforts to imitate US technology and advance in the creation of armed drones. For evidence, let's use the Navy 726A boat, the Star Shadow drone, CH-4B drone, the Y-20 plane, UX-60 helicopters. They're all direct imitations of American weapons. Senator Batad, during Cross-X, you were confused with Ms. Amberbrand about the weapons, about the weapon switch and exactly how long it would take, but I want to let you know that China has always been in talks with Saudi Arabia and now practically sell American weapons to Saudi Arabia, which will only keep the war going. According to the CSAC, since 2014, China has sold more than 30 CH-4 drones to countries, including Saudi Arabia, with deals with more than $700 million. These sales are helping China spread its influence to the Middle East, and it sells to other nations. If America were to lose Saudi Arabia, then America's loss in sphere of influence in the Middle East would be detrimental to not only our loss of foreign policy, but our economy. Here, we are the United States. Negate.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 53 seconds. All those wish to question the senator, please raise your placard. Senator Ambervand.
Hey. Hi, Senator Morales. So I have a couple questions for you. So you agree that because of the influence of Chinese weapons and the fact that they've already been talking, the war will keep going, right?
100%.
So isn't it better if we allow Saudi Arabia to turn to Chinese weapons so that the United States is no longer involved?
Not at all, because as I mentioned in our speech, it actually ties in with our American economy, and we've been benefiting from these weapon sales. So
Sure.
Why should we make them stop if they've actually been a benefit?
So our economy is doing pretty well. So why do we care about weapon sales as opposed to the lives of hundreds of thousands of civilians?
But I don't only see it as weapon sales. I see it as relations in another region that actually help us counter terrorism.
How exactly do we counter terrorism this way?
As I stated in my teach, the TFTC, everything goes in a circle. We're actually co-chairing with Saudi Arabia to help fight against terrorism.
But don't we still provide aid to these areas? Don't we still use our own counterterrorism efforts that don't have to do with—
Of course, 100%, but I've already stated to you how effective this method has been, Senator Amberman. You are on my side.
But these arms are being used to kill hundreds of thousands of civilians, Representative.
I always put America first.
The question period there has elapsed. That question block rather. Senator Bernella.
Hey, Senator
Okay.
Tom.
So that was a great speech. But let's talk about some of your own, some of the people on your own side, like Senator Kumar, for example.
Okay.
He says that by implementing this bill, or by banning our weapons sales, Iran will ramp aggression. Correct?
Yeah.
So by doing that, even okay, I understand your point that China will indeed take over.
Inevitably.
How long? Yeah, but it'll take over for military arms, right?
Yeah.
If we drop out. But how long will that take, approximately?
Approximately, I can't tell you, but they've already been having relations with each other. So
Okay.
honestly, if
So
you ask
can't-
me,
can't
it wouldn't be
tell
too long at all.
approximately how much time, but you can agree that it will take at least a year, right? A year or 2 years.
Honestly, they've been having such strong connections, I wouldn't be surprised if it was less.
Okay, well, still, why does that refute the point that Iran would ramp aggression and try to take control of Yemen for the Houthi rebels?
Well, honestly, Senator, that's still in a loop. But if you ask me, I will always outweigh the benefits. And today's
How
legislation
is that a
just
benefit? You're
makes
putting
sense
more
when we
Yemenis-
understand the general terms that we get
Thank
with
you,
these.
Senator. Question period
I
is
can
now
continue.
elapsed. Thank you, Senator Morales. All right. So I know that it is usually custom to, since we have broken cycle, ask for another neg speech, but because I very much frown upon a one-sided debate, I will be asking for an aff speech. So is there anyone who wishes to speak on the affirmation? Senator Murguita, you have the floor. I was getting to you. I saw you were shaking your head, but I was getting to it.
Thank you. Howdy, everyone. For the judges, that's Senator Murguita, Murgida, speaking for the first time this legislative session. Just any indication from the PO. I have you pinned, so I can't see the judges. So your thumbs, everyone's good.
Yep, I'm good.
Saudi Arabia's national motto is that there is no God other than God and Muhammad and his prophet. For a country built on freedom, it is seen that Saudi Arabia has done the complete opposite, killing 14 children on a bus going to school using United States weapons. At the end of the day, it's because today's legislation actually ends human right violations by Saudi Arabia. You pass today's legislation. Let's ask two simple questions in today's round. The first one, which side brings human rights reform? Pass today's legislation because to prevent abuses from United States arms. That's because Senator Morales and Amberman both tell you that today's legislation is going to have Saudi Arabia go to Russia and China. Here's the problem with that argument. It's based off of the idea that they have a good relationship in the status quo. Look to the New York Times in October of 2019, where they tell us that Saudi Arabia is mad at Russia because of the fact that they were unable to complete a deal regarding the fact that they wanted $2 million arms trade deal that never went through. Here's the problem today. They aren't on good terms because these deals aren't going through. Russia wants money. Saudi Arabia isn't paying up. At the end of the day, we are paying up by giving them weapons, but the only thing we are doing is funding terrorism and killing innocent civilians. Look to another article conducted by the University of Pennsylvania in June of 2019, where they tell us that there are 7 documents of Saudi Arabia selling our arms, not to the Taliban or the Houthi rebels. It's to ISIS, our biggest enemy in the status quo. They also show that because of these weapons, it's led to a lot of amounts of abuses. Let's establish that today. At the end of the day, it's because human rights are the most important thing in today's round, and the only thing that we are doing is making them worse. When you fail, you pass today's legislation. But second, pass today's legislation because of the second question being, how does today's legislation affect the United States? So, in the status quo, the United States gives them arms by having a check and balance. Look to Lockheed Martin in 2018, where they show us that they use their arms as a check to be able to get these arms in effectively. Here's the problem. That check isn't actually effective. It actually makes matters worse. as Lockheed Martin goes on to explain that they have been unable to track their weapons in the status quo because of the fact that they don't actually have a tracking process on them and they don't know where they actually are. So when you fail today's legislation, you increase the amount of arms going to Saudi Arabia, you don't have a tracking process on them, and you don't actually know how effective they are in solving the war in Yemen. At the end of the day, it's because all we are doing is making a country with a freedom, a country with a violence. You pass today's legislation.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of exactly 3 minutes. All those who wish to question the Senator, please raise your placard. Senator Morales.
Perfect, thank you. Hey, Senator Mariga, great speech. So
Thank
you stated exactly how Russia and China, that point completely falls, considering the fact that they're not in good relations, correct?
They're in terrible relationship.
They're in terrible relations. But are you talking about Saudi Arabia and Russia? That's what you were talking about in your example, correct?
Yeah.
But you stated no example for China. So
Okay,
I'm actually
Saudi Arabia and
interested in
China, they also have a bad relationship.
So
Here's
how
why
do they
their
have a bad
relationship.
relations? Because you give
I'll
us
explain why their relationship is bad.
Russia.
It's not because of money. It's because of what's going on with like
If
the
they have such a bad
coronavirus.
relation, then why are they doing talks right now?
Okay, they're doing talks about trying to get other aid in, humanitarian aid, economic aid. They're trying to get other support, not
I
arms
stated
sales.
to you in my speech that they're actually working on deals together. So how are they?
No, they're not. They are actually trying to get economic stuff in because they haven't actually reached the idea of getting arms sales in. Saudi Arabia is more worried about getting Russia than China because Russia has better arms than China.
Okay, perfect. I rescind my time.
All right, Senator Ambravan.
Hi, Senator. Good speech. So, regardless of relationships, how can you dispute the concrete fact that I brought up in my own speech that Russia is trying to sell arms to Saudi Arabia?
Right, Russia's trying but failing epically because of the fact that they want money, Russia wants arms.
So, let's say that we do cut.
We're doing it at an affordable price.
But
Russia
if we cut Saudi Arabia off, won't they be forced to go to Russia? And Russia has open arms to selling them.
but Russia's not willing to lower their price. Vladimir Putin has said that he has a stern price and he's not willing to negotiate. It's you pay up or you don't get our guns. The problem is that they are more violent guns. So there's an incentive, but they're not actually doing it.
Okay, Senator. So let's move on. So you specifically said that we are funding terrorism with our own arms. How is this even inherently true?
Okay, because as I told you in my speech, there's 7 documents of us giving it to ISIS. Like, there's
Did Senator Morales not say that Saudi Arabia constantly has counterterrorism efforts?
No, they don't, because we don't have a tracking process on our guns. Like, you could say that they do, but our weapons are just going to
But
terrorism.
at least the
and we
fact
don't
that
even
the
know
guns
about it.
has to be going to them.
Questioning period has elapsed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senators. All right. Seeing as we just had a speech on the affirmation, all those who wish to speak on the negation, please raise your placard. Senator Talreja, you have the floor unopposed.
I thank the chair. My name is Representative Talreja. My code is 114, and I stand at the leisure of all those above me. I think everyone's ready, and I'll be using my phone to time myself, if that's okay with you. Okay, let me just get that. Okay. When Liz Cheney used the words, abandon our allies, appease our enemies, and apologize for America to describe foreign policy plans, I believe that they are far more applicable to today's bill because the implications of its passing are far more harmful. In order to avoid losing our one true key to the Middle East, we must fail today's legislation. First, let's make it clear that Saudi Arabia is the only country in the Middle East that can truly aid United States interests because we have pushed Turkey, one of our most valuable allies, away. According to an April 11, 2019 Vox article by Ward, when the United States helped Kurdish YPG forces take over territory in northern Syria, it proved to be one step too far for Turkey's President Erdogan, who openly blames the United States for many of Turkey's woes. But what was the true impact of this was that President Erdogan now repeatedly blackmails the United States by threatening to close 2 of our strategic military bases, Incirlik and Kursk. For decades, these bases have been directly used by Washington for its military deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. With the recent cooling of relations between the United States and Turkey, we just cannot jeopardize our diplomatic relations with Saudi Arabia, and that's a sure-shot consequence of ending this arms deal. Unless we want to risk losing another ally, we must also negate because Saudi Arabia's payment to the United States for arms is clearly overcompensation, and for a reason. According to an October 17, 2018 Forbes article by McCarthy, Saudi Arabia spends approximately 10% of its GDP on arms, and the kingdom has promised to buy more United States weaponry than its forces can likely operate, as Senator Batad stated in questioning. Contrary to the dependence that Senator Saxena paints, it's less about the weapons that both sides have wrongly emphasized throughout this debate, and more about the influence that Riyadh is effectively buying in the United States. And it's important to understand that they can do the same elsewhere. In fact, according to an October 8th, 2018 Business Insider article by Woody, Saudi Arabia has continued to show interest in not terrorists, but in Russia's S-400 air defense system, in addition to the arms that Representative Ambravan mentioned. This is the same weapon system that Turkey bought towards the end of our cooperations with them. Furthermore, Saudis have resisted United States' requests to disavow their interest in buying the S-400 and have continued talks with Moscow. If we let go of arms deals, we push Saudi Arabia towards an anti-American country that it already has a well-developed relationship with. And as I've shown Representative Murguida, they do have the money, seeing as they're spending 10% of their GDP. It is important to think more than 2 steps ahead in a debate as complex and as multifaceted as this one. And after doing so, it's easy to see why the negations arguments outlast that of the affirmations. So we must fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that speech of 2 minutes and 52 seconds. All those who wish to question the Senator, please raise your placard. All right, Senator Kumar.
Hi, Senator. So I'm on your own side, but it seems like no one else wants to question you. So let's just establish a few facts, shall we?
Sure.
So first, Saudi Arabia is probably our best ally in the Middle East, right? Especially among
Yes.
Islamic countries. And
Yes.
if we stop selling them weapons, we'll lose that friendship, right?
Yes.
And that'll be bad for American security.
Yes.
So if we're talking about human rights in the region, it's better that we actually have a partner in Saudi Arabia than just abandon it in total.
Yes, and that brings up an important point. As I've already clarified in questioning with other speakers in the affirmation, our decision to remove weapons won't stop them from committing human rights violations as we've seen throughout their history.
Right. So basically, the affirmation's points fall flat.
Exactly.
Their entire advocacy really makes no sense.
Yeah.
So we should negate this piece of legislation.
Yes.
Can you think of any reason at all to affirm?
No. Because
Good.
after
Neither can I.
listening
I
to
yield the
arguments,
rest of the time.
All right, Senator Murguida.
Thank you. So you said that Saudi Arabia is just going to continue to commit human rights violations, right?
yes.
But Saudi Arabia really likes U.S. arms, right?
Yes, because it's less about the arms, as I mentioned in my speech, and more about the influence that they're able to buy in the United States.
Okay, so they want our influence. We remove our influence. Doesn't that give them an incentive to stop committing human rights violations?
No, because they're not dependent on our arms.
They're not. How much percentage of arms do we give to Saudi Arabia?
We're not dependent on giving arms to Saudi Arabia either.
We're not. So we pass this legislation. We're going to lose jobs because we give our to Saudi Arabia.
No, actually, studies have shown that the United States arms companies make more money off of giving arms to European countries and other allies.
Okay, so we're not going to be affected, but they are, all right? So we should pass this legislation since we're not going to be affected, but Saudi Arabia will be.
No, because we need
Why?
we need
You just said we didn't. You said we're more dependent on European
no, we need a
countries
transit
than
location in the Middle East. We need a location in the Middle East. Your
So why don't we
affirmation,
just find a different country that's not committing human rights violations?
there is no other country that we have a good relationship with.
That's
Saudi Arabia is the only one.
Create a good relationship.
Questioning period has elapsed.
Motion.
Senator Kumar, state your motion.
Previous question.
Any seconds? Seeing as everyone has spoken and assuming unanimous consent, the chair will now move to previous question. So
Perfect.
because the, what is that, Senator Kumar?
You're probably just about to address this, but because our sponsor isn't here, how do we have a final appeal?
Oh, I got this. I actually talked with President Pro Temp, and he said that we will be skipping the affirmation final appeal, but Senator Ambravan will still be giving the negation final appeal. I know it's a bit messy, but because Senator Saxena had issues, we will still be giving the neg final appeal, but not the affirmation final appeal. So Senator Ambravan, you have the floor for your up to 1 minute and 30-second final appeal.
Senator Ambravan giving the final appeal, indication when ready from the PO, and I'm going to assume the judges are ready. Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Senator Kumar says it perfectly. Saudi Arabia is helping us win the fight against terror. America stands against terrorism and stands with the Saudi Arabian cause, which is why the negation inherently wins this debate. So let's take a look at the main arguments of the affirmation. Let's say that Senator Batad and Senator Saxena are correct. It will take up to 10 years to switch Saudi supplies to Russia. But this is still an issue because the Carnegie Endowment in 2019 explains that Saudi Arabia is trying to ease the conflict in Yemen in their fighting, as they need to stabilize before their humanitarian efforts. We want to end the famine, and we want to support human rights and stop the suffering. But this only ends when we keep supporting Saudi Arabia because they need the arms to do this. Furthermore, Brookings explains that the Houthis are against Western influence, meaning that they are directly fighting against American democracy. So why would we not want to remove them from power? Our arms allow for this to happen, but in this 10-year gap, we remove all Saudi Arabian leverage, which is why we negate. There's a reason we only had 2 affirmative voices. The negation is the side that is mutually beneficial. It allows us to counter terrorism, like Senator Morales explains. Senator Magida, you say that we're funding terrorism, but as has been proven constantly, Saudi Arabia is trying to counter terrorism, as Senator Morales brings up evidence that they've put in hundreds of millions of dollars into counterterrorism efforts. So sure, we can't track where our arms are going, Senator Magida, and some may end up in the wrong hands, but the most important thing to consider is that we curb terrorism. The US fights a war on terror, and to help this effort, instead of take a step back, you fail.
Thank you, Senator, for that closing appeal of 1 minute and 31 seconds. Seeing that Senator Saxena is here, but she missed most of the round, I don't think it would be fair to make her give a final appeal as well, but she is here for vote since we have previous question. All those wishing to vote in the affirmation of this bill, please raise your placard. And Senator Saxena, if you could turn on your camera. Okay, your camera making your Wi-Fi worse, and that works too.
Yeah.
So I count. When I say your name, put down your placard. Senator Batad, Senator Murgida, and then Senator Saxena. Also, all those in the negation. Senator Morales, Senator Ambravan, Senator Talreja, Senator Kumar. All right. On a vote of 3-4, this bill does not pass. Are there any motions on the floor?
Motion.
Senator Kumar.
In a natural break in the flow debate, I motion for a 5-minute recess.
Any seconds? Any objections? Seeing no objections, the chair will allow for a brief 5-minute recess. Starting now.
Please, because I flipped last set, Bill. Because
Yeah, no, because Lucas had to PO.